You're about to listen to the Complete Developer Podcast, the podcast by coders, for coders, about all aspects of life as a developer.
I'm Will, the curmudgeonly experienced developer.
And I'm Beej, the optimistic newbie developer. Welcome to another episode of Complete Developer Podcast. This week we are talking about dealing with frustrations as a developer. We'll start off by defining frustration and discuss some of the things that cause frustrations for developers. We'll then talk about the typical and usually most unhealthy responses, and end the episode with a talk about healthy ways to deal with frustration. But before we get started, Will, what have you been fighting this week?
Well, you know how I said I was going to shut the business account down?
Yeah.
Plans changed because that was a Monday. Tuesday morning, I got an email about some stuff that a client needed built. And so I built a Twilio integration over the weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. You know, I pretty much did a 2-liter Mountain Dew bender on Saturday, and just like,
that's crazy because you and I had lunch Saturday.
Right. And I did 3 hours before, 3 hours before. I did the hardest stuff then. And then I got back here and I finished it up.
Okay.
So it was 8 hours and 10 minutes or something like that. And it was supposed to be like a 20-hour project, I think. But we just burned it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I'm keeping the business account open. I'm moving some of the expenses out that I really feel like I can't justify to an auditor. So stuff like the cable at the house. It's like, the cable internet. I'm not using it enough for the business, because I'm not here working from home all day.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be different if you were working from home all day.
Yeah.
At least 2 or 3 days a week.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I could justify it and say, yes, this is a business expense. Same thing with the phone.
Yeah.
And I want to get those things down and get enough contract work to, build up some cash. And then I want to go, there's some sites where you can buy, domains and working websites that have revenue. And, of course, you have to check and all that, and you'll be spending several $1,000s. And I want to buy something that generates revenue and then build it up. That's like a longer term goal. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm dealing with lots of interesting stuff at work that actually fits very nicely into this episode. So
awesome. Yeah, I figured as much.
So how about you?
I got up this morning, got ready for work, went out to walk my dog, and looked at the back tire on my truck was flat. I generally leave for work around 6 a.m. I got to get there early to get the good parking, or else I have to pay for parking.
And you got to avoid Nashville traffic, too.
Yeah. It was around 5:45, 6 o'clock when I saw this. So I went in, looked up the tire stores. They don't open until 8 or 9.
Yeah. So
I waited around until about 7:30 when I knew somebody would actually be in. And I texted, and I sent a Slack message to my boss and the lead developer on the team, and took a picture of the tire and was like, hey guys, I'm not going to make it in this morning. I got to deal with this. They were both like, that's cool. Do what you got to do. Just, work as much as you can remote. So I get over to the tire store. Of course, there's 2 or 3 cars in front of me, so I had to wait. But they had Wi-Fi and coffee and actually a workplace set up with like dividers, and it was like they knew people have jobs and they have to work during the day.
Wow. See, I've got to do that fairly soon because I got a bunch of work to do on my car, and it's just a bunch of chairs.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm going to do there. I think I'm going to walk to McDonald's, to be 100% honest.
Yeah.
Because the Wi-Fi there is a little bit faster.
Well, their Wi-Fi was great. I was actually able to VPN and get stuff done. I actually made a push to commit while I was there. So that sort of led to the idea for this episode. Was kind of the frustrations that I went through today. One thing I do want to say is last week, I actually met Bob from accounting.
There's always a Bob in accounting. So what do you have for us for IoTs?
Let's go ahead and roll that music. This week for IoTs, I have a fun little project called the Faux Neon Sign with EL Wire.
So L-wire, that's Spanish for the wire, right?
Yeah, sure, why not?
We already had the episode about learning languages. This is me applying it.
Neon's low-voltage cousin, EL Wire, is easy to bend, and it's driven by cheap inverters, or non-expensive inverters. You can even get it to flash and fade. And the really cool thing is this project walks you through how to make a sign with EL Wire. It is pretty cool if you want to decorate your place like a dive bar. We should totally make one and put in the server room here.
Yeah.
That says
have it flash out the window. The HOA will love that.
Yeah. Server room. So the hardware is electroluminescent wire, EL wire, generally about 9 feet for most signs. An EL wire inverter, 2 AA size, of course, 2 AA batteries, a thin board, around 16 by 16. In this, he used acrylic, dry erase marker, glue, super glue, or cyanoacrylate. The gel glue is best for the acrylics.
Right.
Painter's tape and duct tape. So I'll have a link to this in the show notes, but it looks like a pretty cool project, and you could throw like a small Arduino or something on it and have it pulse and flash to music if you really wanted to go all IoT onto it. But
yeah, you get some techno, so it's like instead of like dance music, it's like
Or you could really get fancy, and you could get like multiple colors and layer them on top of each other, so like you could change the sign. So who's talking to us?
We have a comment from Stefan Maynard. Stefan. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. It says, "Hey guys, I really like your show and gave you a 5-star on iTunes review. Great work."
Well, thanks, Stefan. He went on to ask about our past episodes, which we recently made available on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcatchers. We have noticed a spike in traffic.
A wee bit.
Yeah.
You know, okay, so we're like, hey, that's a completely reasonable request, right? We set it up wrong. You know, we were in a hurry.
Yeah. By the way, thanks, Stefan. We really do appreciate the feedback. Yeah. It helped you because we got the shows out there for you, but it helped us.
Yeah.
So we've got some complete developer swag just for you. Shoot us a message on Twitter,
Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Plus, Carrier Pigeon.
Yeah. However you want to get in touch with us, and we'll get that to you.
Not really Carrier Pigeon. I don't want bird poop on my car, but anything else is good.
Well, if you do happen to have a magical owl, his daughter would love that, but you know.
Yeah.
No, get in touch with us. We will get that to you. And guys, if you'd like some CDP swag, leave us a review on iTunes, comment on the website, or any of the social media that we're part of. Well, we post all our episodes to Google+, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I'm kidding about Instagram. We do not post episodes there.
So far.
I don't know how to yet. So the dictionary definition for frustration, the feeling of being upset or annoyed, especially because of inability to change or achieve something. And frustration is an emotional reaction. It occurs when we're blocked from reaching a desired outcome. You know, that may be a idea of what we want. It may be what we expect to happen, but not what we want to happen. But generally leads to being irritable, annoyed, and angry. In it, results or goals do not fit the effort you apply towards them. Frustration comes from when your results or goals don't fit the effort that you apply towards them.
Right. I mean, it's like we talked before about the difference between force and work.
Yeah.
Right. If you're exerting a whole bunch of force and nothing's happening, that's frustrating if you've got any sense at all.
These can come from internal or external blockages. The internal ones typically are personal deficiencies.
Yeah, like personality defects that get in the way, achieving certain goals. Like this is something I've run into quite a bit because I've dealt with a lot of people that are wanting to start startups and they have poor time management skills. You have a personal deficiency that's going to make this impossible, but you're going to keep trying for the goal. And what's going to happen? You're going to stay frustrated because there's no way that this is going to work.
No. Or people who don't understand technology but want to do a technology startup.
Yes.
I've been approached by a few people, some mutual friends, that wanted to start things. I'm like, but that already exists. Yeah, but it's the same thing, but for this particular case.
I want to make Facebook for orangutans.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
It's meetup.com for yak shaving.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not going to work, bro. And another one is, competing goals. And this can even be not necessarily explicit goals. Like I've seen people, and this is common with the people wanting to do startups, especially software developers. Well, big corporations are evil, and businesses are run in a bad way, and it's negative to everybody that touches it and the planet, and whatever else you want to throw at it. And then they turn right around and go, "I'd like to start a business." It's like, you're not going to become something that you think is evil. Like the mind resists becoming evil the same way the body resists self-impalement. Like, it's not something that you go towards.
Same thing with hating people that are rich, but wanting to be rich. It's like, it doesn't go together.
Yeah. And it's a thing of two separate goals, right? Because you've got it in your head that to be this thing I want to be, I can't be that thing. And the fact that those two sets don't overlap in your mind.
Yeah.
Well, one of those goals is going to win.
Or both are going to lose.
Yeah. Well, more than likely it'll be both.
Yeah. And the other one is external blockages. These are conditions that are outside of yourself, and they can be unavoidable. These are ones that we have less control over.
Yeah, and the lack of control actually really makes it worse.
Yeah. The big thing here is the perception of wasting time.
I don't know anything about getting angry about wasting time other than my 45-minute commute this morning that should have been 22 minutes.
Yeah. Lines, traffic.
Yeah, and you always meet these productivity people that are like, oh, well, I triage my to-do list in traffic in the mornings.
You are the reason that I was almost late to a meeting that started 2 hours after I arrive at work because there was a car on fire on the interstate.
Yeah. But, time wasting and money wasting are two really big things that will create a lot of frustration. And I mean, they still do for me. I've gotten to where I'm pretty quick about isolating and getting away from people that waste my time.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm getting more of that myself because I like people.
Yeah.
And sometimes what you would consider a waste of time, I wouldn't, because I find it pleasurable to sit and talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do that too, but it's contextual.
Yeah, exactly.
And the context in which you will put up with it is shrinking.
Yes. So that kind of covers the basics of what frustration is, kind of how it comes about. A few specific causes of frustration for developers are unknown errors. The general ADO exception was unhandled.
Did you run into that today?
Yes, many times.
I can tell you about the one I ran into in Delphi, where I would make a call and it would just not terminate. It would never come back.
Oh yeah, you told me about that.
And it turned out to be a message box that was popping up in the DLL that we were using, and there was a licensing issue, and that's why it was not coming back.
Really?
But when you pop up a message box in Windows on a web server, you don't see the message box because it's not in that context. You're not there. So you never get any indication that there was something wrong. What's even better, though, is that if you were running in dev mode, in other words, you're not running under the IIS user permissions, you're running under yours, and you have the Delphi environment open, that message box doesn't pop up because it's like, oh, he's in dev mode. He's evaluating the software, so don't screw him over with a message box. It's only when you deploy that this happens.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Oh, I was fit to be tied when we found that. Man.
At least you found it. Uninformative error messages are the most annoying thing.
Yeah, which any entity framework message Microsoft
null
puts out.
Null reference exception.
Yeah, null reference is an ugly one because it won't tell you what was null.
Yeah.
Although they're supposed to be fixing that where it does.
They say it's really difficult to do that And
yeah, well,
I've heard on
it's
other
difficult
shows,
to write a compiler too,
Yeah.
so get on it.
On other shows, I've heard them say, well, can you at least tell me the type? Because if you could tell me the type, I can figure out which one was null.
Yeah, or at least that cuts the probability down a lot.
Yeah.
That's an ugly one. The one I get all the time dealing with Delphi code from C# is access violations because of who owns the memory. It's like, oh, well, yeah, you can try to write to it, but you don't own it, so it's going to blow up. Mm-hmm. And you have to do a lot of things to make stuff work. I've also seen stuff like stack imbalance exceptions, where it's like, oh, this Delphi method expects things to be put in CPU registers, and you put them on the stack, and you tried to call it, and you didn't happen to see that calling convention, and of course you can't do that from .NET. And so it says, hey, the stack is imbalanced. And it's like, what does that mean? I didn't know you could unbalance a stack like that. What?
Jenga!
Yeah.
So we could go on and on about
and we probably will.
Useless error messages. Yeah, we probably will after the episode. But next is unrealistic expectations.
And this is the big one that comes out of sales. Folks, or it gets blamed on sales a lot because a lot of it really is organizational problems masquerading as sales problems.
Sales,
they're supposed to sell things.
Well, the thing is, sales is where the product meets the customer, and so that's where you see it.
Yeah,
that's where the problems come out.
That's like saying bumpers are bad because they get dents in them. Well, yeah, because it's the first thing that hits. What do you want? And then, so sales gets that a lot. Another one is when management doesn't understand what's going on and they underestimate. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I've never coded before, but it's just a button. How hard could it be?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's a button that makes a web service call that has to cross, a firewall boundary and, deal with this weird PHP format crammed into JSON and, crammed into XML. And, oh, yeah, we have to get it back across the wire in a performant manner. Because I had one of those a few jobs ago that was like the menu for the site was massive. And you called a web service to get the XML for the menu and you transformed it in JavaScript. So you were calling this massive ASMX web service and pulling it back. And it was like a megabyte of JavaScript because it had so much crap in there and they wouldn't.
Holy cow.
And they were like, well, it's taking 30 seconds to load the page. It's like, why is it taking 30 seconds? I said, 'cause physics. You can't get that much data over a wire.
I can so see you saying that.
Like,
'cause physics.
Like, what do you want? I mean, like you're going to set anything that can carry that much data is something you don't want to pay for between you and the network edge. Because like this is for external clients.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it was nuts. And that was just like one example out of thousands. But that was the one where I said, 'cause physics, which was not appreciated. But that was, frustration coming out.
I think that's the quote of this episode. 'Cause physics.
Yeah.
And then there's also the internal unrealistic expectations. It should do this.
I always like to tell people.
It's not doing it, but it should do this.
I always like to tell people, you just should all over yourself. You just should in your pants.
Yeah.
Because you just made a mess. It's your problem. And it's completely internal to you. Because you have this perception of the way the world should work. The world does not work that way. And the gap between those is why you're frustrated.
Then you have uncooperative coworkers. And this could be a lot of different things from incompetence to laziness.
Well, if they're competent and lazy, you'll never know.
That's true. To a simple lack of communication.
Yes. I've worked with quite a few that, you can't get a straight answer out of them about stuff that's going on. And you talk about something that's just crazy because they're basically holding your job in their hand and they don't care. And those are the worst people. Like, I like to go stand in front of their desk and just glare at them.
And then there's differences in expectations.
Yeah, because you'll run into, there was one place I worked that was very, very frustrating. In fact, it was, if I'd been there longer, it would have been the worst job I ever had because management was like, oh, well, our developers can work 80 hours a week to, cover up for the fact that we lied to our client. And, I'm willing to work 60 because, you're paying out the nose and I'm hourly.
Yeah.
But not 80. Like that's the bridge too far. And that difference in expectations ultimately was part of what led to me not being there. That and I really wanted out real bad.
And then there's reading other developers' code.
Yes, and hell is other people's code. It is like, even if it's somebody whose code you typically follow, they'll be doing things that you're like, oh man, why'd you do that way? And it's that little break in expectations that
when I was putting this together, it was funny. I found this this whole little comic, and I'll put the comic up on reading other people's code. Yeah, and it's like, where does this bridge go? It makes no sense. Why is this bridge even here?
Yeah.
And then the next one is the comments, and it's, / this is a bridge.
Yes. Instantiate the bridge.
Yes. And so in an earlier episode, I mentioned comments are either true or useful.
Yeah.
That comment was true.
Well, and, like reading their code, the other thing is the guy that over-engineers everything.
Uh-huh.
Which, I mean, I've been that guy a couple times, and I've had that feedback. Of course, part of it, too, is when stuff changes out from under you. It's like, oh, we have to build this really complicated thing that's really flexible. And then they go, oh, yeah, it's just this one use case. And you're like, I've got 1,000 lines of code for like dynamically loading assemblies up and dispatching to different ways of doing this. Yeah. And now there's only one way. Thank you for making me look like an idiot. When you have to read that code, it's very frustrating. Yeah, it's bad communication and
bad expectations. And then one of the most annoying things that we did an entire episode on, interruptions.
Yeah. I mean, most interruptions are really not, it's not something that's valuable. Like if somebody goes, hey, the server room is on fire, that's useful information. If it's a thing of, oh, hey, I didn't plan ahead and I just assume that the developers can bail me out at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interrupt you, while you're neck deep in debugging something that's going to time out while I'm jabbering and you get to start over. That very quickly gets you extremely frustrated.
You know what my favorite interruption is?
Going home.
You know what my second favorite interruption is?
Lunch.
You know what my third favorite interruption is?
Going to the bathroom.
No. You keep trying. No. What I'm getting at is hey, I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. You want anything?
I actually find that useful because those are usually short enough. But
no, like what I'm getting at with that is not all interruptions are bad, especially when you like the people you work with and they like working with you too. You go to lunch together. When one of you is going to grab coffee, you offer to get other people coffee, or they go with you. You're like, hey, I'm going to get coffee. You want to come up with me? Yeah,
because I interrupted my coworkers today because I ate lunch twice. Went to the Japanese place and I got a bunch of food and I ate all of it. And I got back to the office and I'm like, you know what? I'm still hungry. And so I just said, hey, I'm going to Burger King. Anybody want anything? And just
I always thought you were a hobbit, but you have breakfast, second breakfast, 11's lunch.
I was just starving. I ate lunch twice. And but I asked my coworkers, but you do that in a way that doesn't.
You do know about 1,000,000 ways to fix a potato.
Anyway.
Sorry.
Another thing that will get you is debugging because it's extremely tedious.
Yeah. 6 minutes to code it and 6 hours to debug it.
Yeah. But, the basic premise here is that it's very easy to get into a situation where you write code that is too complex, too clever for you to actually debug it because it's harder to debug code than it is to write it. So if you wrote it as clever as you possibly could, you're not clever enough to debug it. There's a lot of different responses to frustration, and typically the developers have a response to frustration. We don't usually have a set,
Yeah.
And mine happens to be anger. I get frustrated. I get angry really fast. I also take bugs personally. The running joke at work is there's we're having a data marshaling problem passing stuff between Delphi and .NET. And the running joke is, hey, Will, did you hunt the white whale last night? Because I'll go home and I fight with it. Mm-hmm. And I've done this quite a bit. And I keep making progress. And so eventually I am going to kill the white whale. But
I get angry at some things when things go to QA and they expect stuff that
wasn't in the spec.
Well, yeah, wasn't in the spec. And it's like, you should be able to search for this because people are going to want to search for this. I'm like, yeah. And that's another story that we haven't gotten to yet. Yeah. It's not a bug. It's a feature that we haven't written yet.
So the way that you deal with anger, I'm assuming you probably directly express this with the target of your frustration.
Sometimes. Usually in a nicer way. I've been told by a few other developers at work that when we all get frustrated at something, they usually just shut up and wait for me to speak because the way I talk it out is the nicest.
Yeah.
Like, we realize that early on, so we just shut up and wait till you get angry enough to say something.
Yeah, I get that 50-50 because there's some people that'll be like, oh, yeah, well, you're nicer. But then there's other people that are like, okay, do you really have to use a toilet metaphor for this?
Some people like the toilet metaphors.
Hey, they leave an impression.
Yeah. Hey, guys, I just want to interrupt here real quick to tell y'all about a brand new conference that I'm going to be attending this coming April on the 21st and 22nd called Codeland. It's put on by our friends over at Code Newbies, and you can check out more about it at codelandconf.com. You also have taking out your frustration physically. This is usually a more internal anger thing where it's the machine's not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Banging on the keyboard. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of people think, the way I type that I'm angry.
You do sound angry when you type.
And I'm just like going fast and I'm just...
That's all right.
Yeah.
When I am deep in thought...
I go through 2 or 3 keyboards a year. Let's just put it that way.
When I'm deep in thought, I look angry.
Yeah. I look like somebody kicked my dog. And it's like, no, that's just I guess that's my resting face.
Yeah. I have resting anger face.
Yeah. Especially when you have the implacable Civil War general beard. You just look like you're about to erupt onto the set of Pirates of the Caribbean and start taking heads off.
Which is really funny because I've been told this multiple times. I have grown a greater appreciation for my grandfather because I apparently look very similar to him, and I think he had resting angry face.
Yeah. A lot of old dudes do. Threatening coworkers is another one. I've seen this a few times. I've only actually had to do it once, but that was a whole lot of they were reaching in and messing up other things in my life.
Yeah.
When I was not on the clock. And it was a thing of, okay, if you do this again, I'm going to put your head through the wall. It was I'm protecting my family type situation. But I have seen people that just get, that absolutely fly off the handle when they get frustrated. Quite a few places.
Snap at people, yell.
Get belligerent and get right in somebody's face, and you're sitting here going, okay, you're showing aggressive posture. If this person elbows you in the face, everybody is going to say that it was self-defense.
Yeah. The thing about it is, I've not seen this where I work because most of us get along pretty well. Even, I mentioned that particular QA. It was frustrating when he did that. And yes, I got angry. And yes, I told him why I was frustrated and angry and explained that. And we still get along. We're still friends.
Yeah.
It was just a misunderstanding going back to, miscommunication, different expectations. But we often, when we're angry, act without thinking. And we can...
Well, and we displace it too. Because it'll go towards other people a lot. You always you hear the thing about the coworker that gets angry at work and goes home and kicks the dog. There's an awful lot of coworkers that get angry at home and come in and kick the work.
I know a few of those.
Yeah.
Not where I work, but at other places I've worked.
Tons of them.
And it's not just in development.
No, it's really not. A lot of developers, though, do have the pin-up frustration and rage and the inability to express it well because they've, been emotionally stunted because of other life experiences.
Yeah. Next is giving up. And this could actually be good if the goal is truly out of reach.
Yeah.
This isn't exactly an unhealthy response to frustration, but it can be if it leads to apathy or not caring. Giving up can be anything from stopping a personal project to dropping out of school, quitting a job.
Or just moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just moving, moving away. I got to get away from it.
And I actually hit this point in college because I left where we went to school for one semester because I was frustrated at so much stuff that was completely beyond my control. Mm-hmm. I had a roommate in college that was going to the grocery store one day and didn't come back for 3 days because he just said, "I've never seen the St. Louis Arch. I'm frustrated with life, and I'm headed west." And so he just went there, and nobody knew where he was. It was like the middle of the week.
I remember when that happened, but
yeah. And, it happens.
Yeah, it does. And then also this could be just starting projects, like side projects, and never finishing them.
Yeah, well, I've seen a lot of people
stuck. And then you think, okay, I'll just wait, and then I'll wait some more. And this relates to one of the healthy things we're going to talk about in just a moment of stepping back or walking away. The trick is you got to come back to it.
Yeah.
And this also leads to loss of confidence, which is a side effect of giving up, and usually results in poor assessment of your abilities related to your goals.
It's kind of weird how much heavy graphics stuff I do,
Mm-hmm.
And how much of that I've actually worked with since getting out of college, because I bombed that class at college. And I was very frustrated for years, and I finally realized I was like, I have to get a handle on this. And I'm sure I could ace that class now with no problem. But that could have been a very real thing where I'm like, I'll never do graphics related programming ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that will come out over time is stress.
Yeah, and this is physical signs of frustration, such as fatigue, headaches, depression, GI troubles, hypertension. Basically, the physical signs.
Yeah, and I can always tell if I've pushed too hard and been too frustrated for too long, because I'll get a migraine, and it'll fold me up for a couple days. Like my body will just say, "Yeah, you're rebooting, bro.
Yeah,
you're getting an update."
On the emotional side is depression, which, like I said, is the emotional signs of frustration. It can be poor mood, apathy, or anhedonia, which is lack of
don't enjoy anything anymore.
Yeah, lack of finding pleasure in things that were once pleasurable. And a few other unhealthy responses to frustration are alcohol and drug abuse, or overeating, kind of addictive behavior. It's like the opposite of anhedonia. It's take something pleasurable and do it to the extreme.
Yeah, and I see this a lot in developers as well. And I hate to say this with video games and TV. It's one thing if it's like, okay, I'm blowing off some steam. I acknowledge I'm entertaining myself, but it's a completely different thing when you do like I did, and you play World of Warcraft every day when you get home. It's like as soon as you get home till you go to sleep at night.
Yeah,
and you do that for months. Like that's a very unhealthy coping mechanism. In my case, I was in a job that I did not enjoy. That was very frustrating. That there was no raises, no chance of promotion. You're just kind of locked in. Other people are controlling what you do and the way you do it, and you're just a code monkey. You can get to level 85 very fast with that.
Some effective or healthy ways of dealing with frustrations start with something we've mentioned in several different episodes: set realistic goals. And you need to know the difference between what you want to happen, what you expect to happen, and what actually happens.
And the big thing with this too is don't build up a goal in your mind that is unlikely, and then go through the experience and go, oh well, I failed. Like if for an example, I've seen plenty of people trying to do startup type stuff. I'm going to work on this for 6 months and I'm going to sell it and I'm going to make $10 million. Well, what happens? Well, they work on it for 6 months and they finally get a client and they're making $500 a month. It's like you have a passive revenue stream now. Like this would be a good goal, except for the amount of crap that you put in your head about how it should be.
Well, that's why before we started this podcast, we started talking about it in May.
Yep.
We started working on it in June.
And we released in September?
September, yeah. We took our time with it. One, we wanted to do it right, but we also wanted to look at what was realistic. With a podcast, to get a decent listener base, you really got to look at a 2-year plan to get started.
Right. And we're halfway through that right now.
Yeah. And we're growing, honestly, at about the rate that we expect to be at 1 year in.
Punctuated by plateaus and sudden growth that we can't have to figure out what happened.
Well, and the thing is that happens. It's not a steady incline. It's spikes and plateaus.
Well, if you lower the resolution enough, it looks steady though. That's the way I always do it. It's like control minus. Okay, it's a nice curve. It looks good now.
Well, yeah.
Whatever floats your boat, buddy.
If you step far enough back, you can find linear representation in just about everything.
Yeah.
But, next is your attitude in dealing with frustration. Your attitude towards the problem at hand makes a big difference in how you respond to frustrating events.
Yeah, or just life in general. I mean, you and I both had a friend in college who was very shy and awkward around women. And I know that doesn't narrow the set at all. But you talked to him about it, and he was like, well, I want to talk to this girl over here. And you're like, well, why don't you go do that? And his thing is like, well, if I go over and talk to her, she's going to turn and like scream at me and like just have this complete freak out type thing. And it's like, your attitude towards the problem is that this totally unrealistic situation is going to happen. You're going to be completely called out, and you're going in with pessimism. Like, there's no way this is going to come out well.
Well, it's like, do you remember? This was the summer before we got the apartment together. I went down to Murfreesboro for a date and came in late. And you're like, well, that must have went well. I was like, yeah, it did. We were out. We went to dinner and then went for a walk afterwards. And we'd stopped and we're kind of just chatting and stuff. And she looks over at me. She's like, well, are you going to kiss me or not? And I was like, well, I don't want to get slapped because, I'd seen enough movies where that happens.
Yeah, and it's really easy in everything to build something up that just completely cannot happen, and it's not a risk at all.
What was hilarious is she told me, she was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And then said, if a girl slaps you because you try to kiss her, there's something wrong with the girl. And she's like, that's not normal behavior.
Well, and it's
like they may back away and say, whoa, no, but you're not going to get slapped.
And it's a fear-based mindset. And when you build that up towards a problem, either a fear-based or a, anger-based or even just being nervous, it doesn't really help the situation. Like, your emotional attachment to it doesn't change the outcome.
You also need to recognize the situation for what it is. For example, saying to yourself, I'm angry or I'm frustrated can be a big...
Yeah, well, I mean, if you remember, there was the episode that you and I recorded that we never released.
Yeah.
And we got, 45 minutes in or something, and you're just like, I'm really angry right now. I'm like, I am too. And we just stopped.
Yeah.
And we figured out, like, how the pieces fit together, because we realized it's like, okay, we can get angry and we can be mad at each other. I mean, crap, in college, we'd punch each other.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. Like, we have a lot of expensive equipment laying around here too, so we don't want to get in a fight anyway. But the other thing is that's not productive. And having the approach of, okay, I'm angry and I acknowledge that, and I'm going to take the anger out of the situation and then deal with what the cause of that anger was. We fixed a whole bunch of stuff in our process, and we didn't have that problem again.
Yeah, that's very true. Also, by saying to yourself at minimum, or even starting the conversation, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, here's why. But admitting to yourself that you are takes the bite out of the anger.
Yeah.
Because then you feel like your emotional state says, I'm doing something about it.
Well, at that point, when you acknowledge the anger, it becomes something you have, not something you are.
Exactly.
That shifts the entire perspective enough where you can control it.
During this, you might seek advice or help for the situation, or you could take a step back. And this is the corollary to giving up, so to speak. Take a walk, go get coffee, go to lunch, or if you can't get away from the situation and come back to it, do something you do understand. Do something that isn't frustrating. You're getting really, really frustrated with Delphi. Take a break from that. Go write some JavaScript.
Yeah. And actually, when I lay out what I'm going to do in a project, I have, I tend to write it on a piece of paper, and I mark the ones that are the easy things, and I hold those back. I go after the most difficult things first. Because that way, if I get beaten on the difficult things, I can go jump to something else, do it, and then come back with a quick win in my pocket, essentially. And it shifts it enough, usually, where I get right on through it. This last Delphi error, not so much, but...
Well, I mean, that does happen. The other thing, and this is one that I use a lot, is venting to a friend or mentor. And I have a quote here.
Do you have the time to listen to me whine?
About nothing and everything all at once.
Yeah, the thing is like the venting, you do want to get somebody that's not in the situation. Because if they're in the situation with you, you just altered your environment in a way that's negative.
Exactly.
This
is why I don't vent to my coworkers about issues at work. You know, if I'm frustrated about something, I don't vent to them. I vent to you.
Yep. And vice versa, probably.
Yeah. The thing is, it's something that when I'm venting to you, I'm not looking for advice.
Right.
I'm not asking you to tell me how to solve the situation, because a lot of times get my frustration off my chest, and just by having somebody listen to the issue and going, yep, that does sound frustrating.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I will write like these long things on Google Hangouts, and you do the same thing to me.
Oh yeah.
But we'll write these long, frustrating rants on Google Hangouts.
This person is brain damaged, and let me tell you the 47 points of why. Point number 1.
Yeah.
Actually, let's start at 0 because we're programmers. So it's actually 48 points.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I thought of another one while I'm writing.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've never sent email messages or Hangout messages or anything like that to each other ever.
No, but it is so amazing how de-stressing and de-frustrating it is when I send a message like that to you and you go,
yep, that sucks.
That sucks. That's all you gotta say is like, yep, I understand, been there, that sucks. And then I'm like, oh, cool. I feel better, and I'm able to deal with the situation.
It's something that's survivable because you know a survivor.
Yeah.
The other thing you got to watch with this though is being the person that complains all the time.
Good point.
Because we've all worked with that person. Like everything is negative, and I've got a coworker that has said that about me on a few occasions.
Yeah.
Of course, some of the things that were going on, it was like this individual was causing the negativity.
Yeah, I know some people like that too.
Yeah.
They're like,
you complain all the time. It's like, I complain to you because you cause pain. So you gotta be careful about that. The other thing that will happen is sometimes you'll write out these things, like if you're complaining over a digital medium, and then you realize just how much of a goober you sound like, and like how you're completely blowing the whole thing out of proportion. And it's like the whole thing of talking to a duck, to a rubber duck.
Yeah, which we have an episode on that coming up eventually.
And all of a sudden the programming problem just makes sense because you just explained it, and you're like, oh wait, no, and then you just delete it and you go on with life.
Oh, you're talking about I don't delete it. I write it, send it, and then realize that.
Yeah,
you know, because I do this to you. I write it, send it, and then go, oh, wait, after writing that out, that sounds really stupid. Never mind.
Yeah. And I'll sit there and wait after you send one of those because I'm like, okay, he's going to realize it in 3, 2. Bling! Oh, wait, there we are. Hey, it worked out just like I expected.
Another really good way of dealing with, especially frustration in coding, is to have a non-tech hobby.
Especially one that makes you move.
Yeah. You really, when you have a very stressful, frustrating day at work, you want to avoid getting on your computer at home.
Yeah.
If at all possible. Like
even getting onto a video game console is not, you're in the same position as when you were frustrated and you're trying to deal with the frustration. It's like it doesn't break the pattern physically. Like that stuff, I mean, I know this sounds woo-woo, but it kind of sits in your body. Mm-hmm. Like if you were in a body posture and you were frustrated there and you go home and you sit in that same body posture trying to blow off the frustration, it doesn't go away as easy.
No, it actually builds frustration because you get frustrated at the thing that you're trying to use to get rid of frustration. It's like what we talked about and
this is what I do because I call it a weekday.
It's what we talked about in previous episodes with studying in the same room you're going to take the test. Doing things practicing in the same environment.
Except in this case, you practiced before and you got frustrated, and now the test comes, and that's when you're home trying to blow off steam.
So you've set yourself up for frustration, and you're going into a situation similar to the one that caused it. So a way this can work is spending time with friends and family.
Or spending time alone.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Depending on
what the source of it is.
Yeah.
Like my favorite thing in the world is to go into an isolation tank.
That's true. I want to try it, but I still think that's going to drive me crazy.
Yeah. Well, and you don't need to do the 3.5 hours like I did. that's a bit much for initial. Don't shave before you go in there either. That's not good.
Me?
Yeah, well,
really?
If you get like the underbeard, you just got to be careful.
I do tend to trim.
Yeah,
that.
you'll know that you've messed up.
Yeah,
it's like aftershave for like 45 minutes.
Well, yeah, because it's a lot of salt.
Yeah,
to keep you floating.
But I mean that I've found that that's really helpful, especially if I'm dealing with a lot of interpersonal stuff. Is don't go and be around people. Like I know people that they'll have interpersonal problems, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the club." It's like you're going to go be around more people. Yeah. And maybe that's just the introvert in me talking, but that just seems absolutely insane.
Yeah, and most developers are introverted. That's the nature of the beast. There's very few of us like me that are extroverted.
Right.
There are outgoing introverts.
Right, like me.
Yeah, like you. The other big thing is have a non-tech hobby.
Well, you should anyway to be a complete person. Like there's more to life than this. Like you're really missing out if you don't have something else.
No, it's like you and I have martial arts, weightlifting, and you have
hike.
You have hiking and winemaking. I have my motorcycle and
riding.
Yeah.
Hunting, fishing.
Which we do need to go fishing.
Yeah.
The last thing is a Quora answer from Ben Bayert, and in it he talks about how frustration shows that you are outside of your comfort zone.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and this is kind of a specific to a certain type of frustration, because some frustrations are not related to learning and coding.
Right. They're not related to something you actually care about improving in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't want to get better at dealing with jerks, non-physically. It does say that out loud. Like smacking them in the face. Sure, I'm fine being better at that. But, talking them down. I don't care to get better about that. So it's not something that.
Yeah. So when the frustration comes from, say, coding or learning to code, it can show that you are learning or have an area to learn. I, not that long ago, was complaining to you about something, and you said the same thing that another friend of ours said, which was, well, hey, you got the opportunity to learn it now.
Yeah. And I ran into that the other day, actually, with a bunch of CSS stuff. There's like a 10-point list that SitePoint had that, oh, hey, here's some things that you might have missed in CSS. And it was some stuff, and I found it trying to solve another problem. Yeah. And so it was like, okay, not only am I horrible enough that I can't fix this one thing, but here's 9 others.
Actually, you sent that to me, and I was looking through it. I'm going, this is actually some pretty good stuff.
Yeah. And it was an opportunity. Like, you got to look at it that way, because if you don't, like, it's still going to be there and it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Now, this attitude is good for small frustrations when you're coding. The attitude towards larger frustrations is you're going to have more in the beginning as you're learning.
Yeah.
But also, larger frustrations tend to fade. And if you can break them down, you can break them down into small frustrations.
Yeah, because, learned helplessness really is a win. Because you realize you're helpless on this one thing, and you just lay down on the electric shock. No.
Wow.
No, but there's some stuff that is a pain, right? Like, the way that functions get notated. Like, have you ever thought about that? Just how difficult that is? I actually helped my mother with some algebra related stuff. And, the whole style of like how you describe a function and pass parameters into it and how limiting that really is. Mm-hmm. There was a point where I remember being frustrated with that, but eventually the learned helplessness kicked in and I was able to just live with it. Yeah. And now it's the way I think, and so it's not a problem when I see it on math.
That makes sense.
There's a value in learned helplessness, because there is a set of things you can't control. And it's okay to know that.
And it's okay to be outside of your comfort zone when you're learning. Yeah. Or to realize that you've got more to learn. That pretty much wraps us up for talking about frustration. Before we close everything out, Will, what do you have for us this week for Tricks of the Trade?
Well, I want to beat the drum again on a point that you brought up. That's the notion of the way it's supposed to be. And this is one I run into a lot. This is one I have a lot of issues with, honestly, because I have a tendency to look at things and go, okay, this should work this way. And things typically don't match that. I just want to point out to you that when things do not match your expectations, it's both an opportunity to learn and it's an opportunity to exceed expectations. Sometimes you will actually fail, but at least 2 of the opportunities out of the 3 are to learn something and to do better than you thought you could, assuming an equal distribution. So the way that you look at things with the idea that you can know what it's supposed to be and that everything is planned in advance is probably not really a realistic life skill to look at. This is why we have agile development methodologies and things like that, is because predicting the future is extremely difficult. There's a reason that if someone was an actual prophet, that's kind of considered a rare gift and is noteworthy if you can predict the future, is because no one can. Random stuff does happen, and your idea of how things should be will damage your ability to enjoy things as they are.
Don't worry, if you actually can predict the future, no one will believe you anyways.
Yeah, you get to be Cassandra. That's worse. That's just something to always bear in mind. Like there was a point in my life where I thought that I would be a marine biologist by now. I would be somewhere scuba diving, putting probes up the backsides of sea urchins or something. I don't even, looking back on it, I can't even think about what a marine biologist even does. I knew I wanted to be in the water, and I've got a pretty nice life now that I would not have been able to have had I gone that way. It's something I learned actually in a completely random and different direction. There's a book, and I've got it over here somewhere, called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And it basically shows you how to draw better. And the biggest thing that I got out of it was people tend to draw what they expect to see, not what they do see. And so one of the exercises in there is you're copying a picture, take the picture and turn it upside down and then draw it right side up, because it completely breaks your ability to say this is how it's supposed to be when I'm drawing it as it is. And you can draw a beautiful picture when you're doing it as it is versus how it's supposed to be. And that's life. So that's what I got.
Stand by for Titanfall.
If you have a question or comment for us, please email us at neckbeards@completedeveloperpodcast.com. Our theme music is an excerpt from Stand By for Titanfall by Pure Bells, available on SoundCloud and licensed under Creative Commons. The intro music for IoTs is Hillbilly Hip Hop by Jason Belcher. For references, show notes, and to sign up to our email list, be sure and check out the website at CompleteDeveloperPodcast.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at CompleteDevPod and like our page on Facebook to keep up with the news about the show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.